Being bullied for an extended period of time and recovering from it is never an easy process. Although over the past few years I've learned that sharing experiences and actually, explaining the experiences really helps the healing process along. And I'm going to share one that happened to me about 10 years ago, and it is by far one of the most memorable, not necessarily the worst, but the most memorable bullying experiences I've ever gone through. Back in 2003, I was about 14 years old, and my grandma had just passed away from cervical cancer, and that was in like July of 2003. Well, a couple weeks later after her funeral, I ended up going to my first summer band camp. And a lot of people, when I'm telling this story, always laugh, and they always make the joke of, oh, that one time at band camp. Well, unfortunately, this wasn't a joke. At least it wasn't a funny one to me. I was actually really excited about band camp. After losing my grandma, I was excited to get into high school. I play the saxophone, I still do, and being a musician was very important to me, and it still is. So I was excited to take my musical abilities to the next level. So I get to band camp, my dad took me, and I registered, and everything was great on the Monday, and we practiced our marching routines. Little did I know, though, that I was going to be sleeping in a dorm room with a bunch of other guys. When you're gay and you're in high school, often the same gender that you are is very critical of your sexual preferences, and I wasn't even out in high school, and they were very critical of mine already. So that Monday night was probably one of the most difficult nights I had ever experienced. I remember I didn't sleep at all. Everybody was up at night, hollering at each other in the dark, and, yelling and screaming and playing games and playing pranks on people. And just whenever I was about to go to sleep, people would shine flashlights at my face and wake me up. And I remember being called derogatory gay terms every now and then. And the person sleeping under me kept jabbing the top of my bed and laughing, and everybody was I just remember laughing, everybody laughing, because I was a freshman and I was new, and in their eyes I was the gay kid that never really said anything, I remember staying up all night that night, looking up at the ceiling, and just wishing that I was gone completely. There's a lake on the property that the camp was on, and I seriously had a plan of going to that lake and drowning myself when everybody else was asleep. Well, I guess thankfully nobody really fell asleep that night, because everybody was causing a bunch of, shenanigans. Well, anyway, the next morning I woke up, and we did little fun dorm inspections. The drum majors would inspect our dorms and, rate us on our, cleanliness and innovation and all of that jazz. Well, the upperclassmen in the guys' dorm thought it would be funny to shove towels down each other's pants in order to make it look like they were well endowed. Which, now that I look back on it, that was kind of funny. However, back in that moment, I didn't want to do it. I was more focused on cleaning and, making sure everything was nice for the dorm inspection. Well, because I wouldn't do it, I was called a pussy. multiple times, a faggot, a queer, all sorts of things, because I didn't want to shove a towel down my pants and make myself look like I had big balls like everyone else. Of course, I really didn't say anything to them. I just refused to do it. I didn't want to. And in order to make the room look more in disarray, everybody was throwing their musical instruments out in the middle of the floor, and I didn't want anybody to throw my saxophone out there because my saxophone obviously meant a lot to me. However, they took my instrument, it was in its case, but they took my instrument, threw it out in the middle of the floor, and buried it under a bunch of other instruments. At this point, I started panicking. Like, I really felt uncomfortable. I was being bullied, and I did not want to be there. I just could not be there. So I got it in my mind that I was going to leave the dorm. Like, I was like, I need to get out of here. I just need to get away from this, and I need to go and calm down and, you know, recollect myself. Well, as I was leaving the dorm, the guys were, like, shouting at me and hollering and, you know, saying a bunch of negative things, like bullying and insulting me. And I tried running, and two of them tried picking me up and, like, holding me down to keep me there. And I flipped out, and I pushed them away, and I ran for the chapel on the campsite. And all I remember is just hearing them yelling at me from behind, and when I got in there, I just cried. I don't think I've ever cried with that amount of force in my entire life. One of the camp counselors ended up coming in, and we called my parents, and I ended up staying home for the rest of the nights that week. But I mean, I came back to camp during the day, but I didn't spend the night in the boys' dorm. Now that I look back on it, it's just, you know, when you're an adult, it looks like it's just people playing fun little games and pranks. But when you're in those shoes, when you are a kid being objectified and focused on by other groups of people because you're doing something different or choosing not to do what everyone else wants to do, it's very intimidating and very difficult. After that, our band director, who I really appreciate him for doing this, he stood up for me and told them that they were really bad for bullying me like that, and I'll always be grateful for that. But yeah, that's my band camp experience, one of my many bullying experiences. And I feel much better getting it off my chest. I mean, I've been over it for a long time, but sometimes it's just nice being able to voice an experience, you know, as opposed to just merely recollecting on it. Anyway, comment, rate, and subscribe to my channel. I will probably share more of my experiences in the future. If you are feeling bullied, if you aren't feeling worthy of anybody, if you feel like you don't matter, please join the Affirmations for Bullying Victims movement, and I will post a link to it. You matter, and you are valued, and you are loved, and despite what other people may say, always remember that.